Hey everybody, welcome to RunLeadGen Radio. This is your go-to podcast for all things SEO and digital marketing with your hosts Quinn
and Brian.
And today we want to dive into the world of SEO, per usual. But as we're talking about in some of the podcasts in the past, we had touched on some red flags that you should watch out for when doing SEO and when hiring out SEO. So today we really want to spend some time talking to you about when to do SEO, why to do SEO, and most importantly, what are the guidelines when beginning SEO or hiring out SEO. And not only are these our professional opinions, we're not just trying to give you a runaround from our perspective, but we are looking at the guidelines that Google themselves have put out to help business owners choose a good SEO expert.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we decided to use this topic for our podcast today is on our last episode, we talked specifically about people claiming that they're an SEO expert, and there's a lot of red flags that can arise from that, and it's a complicated thing to have someone be a self-described expert, and so that's one of the big reasons we wanted to go over this today.
Yeah, so before we dive into the very specific items of what to look for when hiring out an SEO, or when to start and how to decide when to start, we wanted to talk a little bit about the landscape today. So, when we talk about SEO and the world that exists and all of the marketing groups, people, and agencies that there are, right, it really comes down to the fact of what are your options? If you are a business owner trying to grow, what are your options in the world, right? You have the option to go and knock doors, obviously, cold calls, cold emails. You can do a lot of stuff on your own. There are a lot of local networking groups and Chamber of Commerce and things like that. Ultimately, if you want to compete with the big players in your space, especially if you're a local business, but really across the board, nationwide and worldwide, you have to have digital presence. So that's why we're even talking about SEO to begin with, because of its inherent power to get in front of people everywhere.
Yeah, and to comment on the current landscape, picking an SEO can be a very arduous task. So right now we see people that don't really have SEO experience, but they've started it up as a business and they're basically selling SEO, making big promises, and then passing that on to someone else to fulfill, potentially overseas. And there's a lot of hurdles that you can come up against if you end up going that route with someone that is more of a salesperson rather than an actual SEO expert.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest frustrations, just hearing people's experience, we hear often, we got burned by marketing, and that comes with so much baggage and so much to dive into and unpack, right? But one of the biggest frustrations that I feel like I personally have when I hear that is just knowing that the likely experience that they had was that they got sold by somebody who could talk really well, and then they outsourced that overseas or to another company that really they had no impact of the quality of that work. And so, here you've got somebody that's like, oh yeah, we can do the world for you, we oversell, and then not only do they underfulfill, but they don't have a say on how fulfillment happens at all, right? Obviously a poor experience.
Yeah, and a lot of times what we see in these scenarios is the people that are actually implementing it, they are not invested in the success of that company. They're not an actual partner. They are simply providing something that they said was going to be sold. Here are the deliverables. It's some AI content and some links from Fiverr, or here's a blog post that isn't going to make much of a difference. And now they're saying we've fulfilled on your SEO. And there's a lot of people that are having this experience. Something else that's really common is, people selling SEO for really cheap on platforms like Fiverr, and you have someone that's overseas that's fulfilling on the SEO for your on-site and backlinks that are doing kind of what people might have been doing maybe 10 years ago. And they're doing this for really cheap. And we see people that can get caught up in that, hoping to take some shortcuts or easy wins, when in all actuality, if they slowed down and thought about it, if you could just pay $100 and now you would be dominating, then everyone would do it. And so if that was the case, it still would not equal out to having an actual online presence.
Yeah, I don't want to overhash this, but I do want to make sure it's explicitly clear. We all have a different understanding of marketing. It's not all your profession. That's why you're here. You want to learn. It is our profession. And so we get additional frustrations because people just group us all into one, space and don't see the difference. And if that was the case, right, there wouldn't be in-house SEO positions for large companies. There wouldn't be agencies that we wouldn't have a job. There genuinely is space for good SEOs. Unfortunately, it just gets so muddied by everybody else.
Yeah, I think one thing that has happened is people have generally come to the consensus at this point that SEO takes time to mature. And because of that, if someone can be sold on the service, now they have that expectation of, well, I just need to give it some time. And then after that time has passed and they've paid out and gotten zero traction, now they're in a situation where they feel like, yeah, I bought SEO and I wasn't getting there and it doesn't work. And so why would I want to hire an SEO again?
I mean, it is a great space for spam because it's like we often say SEO is like growing a garden, whereas, PPC or pay-per-click is like a plumber's job, right? You could imagine that gardener could come in potentially, identify a good lifetime value of people that need gardens, plant fake gardens, take 3 months to do it, and then hightail it out of there and leave somebody in the dust without a garden. So obviously things that take time are more susceptible to spam because they can be played off of the fact that it's going to take time. So this is why it's tricky, right? And this is why it's really important to consider the points that we're going to talk about today, because that's really going to help you identify whether or not you're going to see a return on your investment and whether or not it's a legitimate thing or if it's snake oil, right?
Yeah, it's something that every legitimate SEO feels frustration with, that there are countless gurus and experts that are out there selling the service, regurgitating some things they've read on a few articles, and now they're in business. So it's definitely a complicated topic.
So let's dive in, okay? And to do that, I want to make sure we also cover the question, because so many of you are asking, especially if you get this far, I'm a X blank, whatever you want to say, business owner. I do, these products, these services, I have this type of business. Why would I need SEO? And while we've talked a little bit about, okay, well, to do marketing, to market your business, to go to market, you need to go to where people are and where they expect to find you. And in today's world, obviously they're online. We know that, Google holds even still 90% of the online search market share. So, I mean, there's no doubt that if you want to grow a business and you want to get in front of eyes, you're not going to see more eyes and have a lower cost per view, click, impression, lead, and ultimately cost per acquisition than you will through digital marketing. It's just a cheap way to get in front of a lot of people. I was just talking to somebody today. So we do all sorts of marketing for ourselves, which is one of the points that we'll talk about today. Obviously, if you're talking to marketing gurus that don't actually do their work for themselves, sometimes they'll say it's just because they don't take their own medicine. The reality is sometimes they're just not really that good at it and it doesn't work for them.
Yeah, that's a great point, and maybe that's a good segue into kind of diving into our list and covering some of these topics. So,
all right, so let's dive right into what it is you ought to look for. And Brian, you actually brought this resource to my attention. There is a link that we'll share on this podcast, and we're going to talk about it explicitly right now, that Google has put out from their sources of what to look for.
Yeah, Google has a lot of great resources for marketing, especially for web developers and SEO. They kind of have a representative that interacts with the SEO community and provides useful information. And part of that is a resource on here are some of the reasons why you might choose to hire an SEO and some of the steps that you should take before making that selection.
So let's talk about a couple of those, and then we'll have some of our own as well that we want to just briefly talk about. Ultimately, we hope this provides a ton of value for you guys as you consider when to start SEO and how to do that, right? Who to hire. Yeah, so the first thing that Google talks about is being committed to doing what you're about to do, which is SEO. And this definitely resonates with us as SEOs. A lot of times people will hire us, whether through the course of our own personal careers or now as an agency, and they will, they want to pay you to come in and give you the recommendations to make the implementations on site or the optimizations, and then they get cold feet, right? There's a lot of things that come with SEO, including best practices of what you ought to do, and a lot of the time that can be hard for developers and teams that have gone a long time without somebody encouraging them to optimize.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Some of the changes an SEO might recommend could be costly for a business owner to implement, depending on where they're at. So this could be anything from technical changes for the infrastructure or the actual website, or even something like content changes on an important page, like your home page, that might be hard to swallow for some.
Yeah, an example is we've had conversations before, long-winded, back and forth conversations where we're recommending, maybe some CDN changes or caching and security changes to a website that are based off of best practices that are going to both help with the speed of the site and the security of the site, all of which that come from Google themselves to be good, optimizations to help the site perform better, and you will just get pushback. And something that I guess Google is trying to say, and what we're trying to convey as well, is if you want to see genuine results, positive for the search results, you've got to commit to these best practices.
So the second recommendation from Google is to interview the SEO. So this is definitely a good idea. You can obviously go to a site and just find someone and say, hey, I want to hire you. There's even a lot of services where you can just buy the service directly from a website, but the recommendation here is start with the interview process. This is something important, just like hiring someone for your business that's going to work with you every day. SEO is a long-term commitment, and so you will need to work with this company or person for an extended period of time, and so it's important to go through an interview process, and there's some important questions to ask.
Yeah, it's 2024, and the reality is we're in a very digital age, and sometimes we can get lazy, right? We want a quick answer, and we want a quick fix, and we want it cheap, and we want it now. These are not good things to be doing, especially when building a business, and especially when hiring somebody that's going to be touching something so very important, such a valuable asset to your business.
Yeah, so just to jump right into some of the recommended questions when you're interviewing an SEO, the first one is to ask for some examples of the results that they've produced. This could be anything from some specific rankings, or it could even be something like, here are the report results from a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs, and being able to show that they can move the SEO in the right direction.
The second question that Google is asking, or that you ought to ask, is whether or not the SEO is following Google Search Essentials.
Yeah, this is something that we actually brought up on the last episode, where there are SEOs out there that have decided they're no longer going to listen to the instructions that Google gives to them. They're going to not use Google Search Console or some of the other tools from Google because they feel like they have followed those but not gotten the success that they expected. And that can just be some misconceptions or misunderstandings on their part. Or this could be an SEO that says, no, I don't follow the Google Search Essentials because they're doing something more black hat.
Yeah, and the next question that Google asks here is, do you offer additional online marketing services in addition to your search engine optimization?
Yeah, this is a good question because there are opportunities when you are implementing a full strategy across multiple channels to complement one another. There's a lot of opportunity to get very useful information, for example, for the SEO campaign from a Google Ads campaign, like which search terms are converting the best, which branded terms are important to make sure you have good coverage and that the search results are reflective of the business. And so someone that does just SEO is possibly still a good choice, but so it can be important to work with an SEO that's going to have a good idea of the overall digital landscape and how that can impact and support your SEO efforts.
Yeah, I think just like, other industries, other jobs, you want to consider breadth and depth, right? When you're asking questions. And here Google's saying, likely if this SEO agency or person knows more about, say, Google Ads or Facebook ads or other things, those are going to be indicative signals suggesting that this person is legitimate. The next question Google asks and wants you to ask is a very great question when evaluating anything. But in this case, what kind of results do you expect to see and in what time frame, and how are you going to measure those results?
Yeah, those are very important questions. So in regards to the timeline, number one, you want to make sure you're not being sold a false promise and expect something that isn't possible. But what's really important here is that you have a timeline for implementation of their recommendations, when they expect to see traction or when they might expect to pivot if they haven't gained traction by a certain point. And the most important point there was, how do you measure success? So this could be something simple as appearing for the targeted keywords that you're trying to rank for, more organic traffic, or a combination of the two. But it's definitely important to have KPIs to say, yes, this is a successful project and we should continue it.
Yeah. KPIs are key performance indicators, right? We want to make sure, and something that I believe Brian and I stand out among other SEOs is really not stopping with the topmost KPI, right? We not only want to drive keyword volume and traffic to your site, but a good SEO is also going to tell you how that's going to impact your bottom line. They should be evaluating your sales cycle. They should be evaluating your cost per acquisition down to your product or service, and they should have attribution down to that level. And that's not out of the bag for SEOs and their talent, right? That's something that really takes time to develop and to build into your system.
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention about this is if the measurement for success is simply ranking for a keyword, really that is not a good place to just draw the line. We see very often where an SEO might pick a very obscure term or a series of obscure keywords where there's little to no competition and little to no traffic that are extremely easy to show up and rank for. And if that's where you're going to measure success, you might have a bad experience.
And that's where those people come back and say, gosh, I got burned, right? Those are the types of experience that they have. Yeah, the next question that Google has here is, what is your experience in my industry, right?
Yeah, this is a great question because working with someone that might know the ins and outs of your industry can maybe shorten the time frame, the learning curve for your industry, or having content that maybe says something that might not make sense. And so it's a great question to see if there might be one SEO that's a better fit from another.
The next question that they have us considering here is, what experience do you have in my location, my city, my state?
Yeah, this is another great question. If someone has only experience for a really small market, so the results that they've been able to show you are for an uncompetitive landscape, that can give you some idea as to whether or not they might be able to get the job done in your particular location. And it also mentions country. And so if you're doing a nationwide campaign, then having someone that's only worked on the local level might not be a good fit either.
Yeah, that's a great point we haven't really talked about, but there is difference and nuance between local SEO and national SEO, right? Ranking for something right in your immediate area, city or suburb, obviously very different tactics and strategy and implementations for somebody that's trying to rank across the nation.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we do see businesses that might want to compete nationwide, but at the local level, it's very common for companies like e-commerce to need to rank everywhere for their product versus someone with a local service business like a plumber may only need to rank in their immediate area. And so while you did mention that there are some differences, how those differences are reported on is also important. And so, yeah, another good question from Google.
And something that we haven't really, this isn't a podcast to, pat ourselves on the back, but we do want to showcase where we can, how we stand out. And, between the two of us and our team, our experience is quite wide. We do have quite a lot of breadth as far as the types of sites that we've worked on, the industries of business, and whether or not that's been national or local. We've had our hands on sites with, millions, hundreds of millions of pages down to small mom and pop shops. So looking for somebody that has that breadth and depth is always going to be valuable.
Absolutely.
All right, the next question Google has for us here is, what are your most important SEO techniques?
Yeah, this is a really important question because not everyone does SEO the same. And link building versus content versus technical SEO is going to change the outcome of the campaign. And so knowing what's most important to an SEO and where they're going to prioritize work can give you an idea of not only the deliverables and the work that you might expect from them, but also might help you find an SEO that is going to perform better or an SEO that might not be a good fit for your particular business.
Yeah, another great question that Google has here is, how long have you been in business? Obviously, this is an important question when hiring anybody, but certainly when you are considering somebody like an SEO, this is a great question.
Yeah, if you're just starting out and it's low risk for your business to try SEO, maybe someone that hasn't been working in SEO as long could be something that you could delve into. But if you have a large company with a lot of employees that are relying on you, having someone with experience that has learned the lessons that are required to safeguard your business and its digital footprint is a really important thing.
Yeah. And, we as RunLeadGen, we've been here now officially for just about 2 years. We started in June of 2022. But between the two of us, we have nearly 30 years of experience of SEO and digital marketing across industries and then, of course, channels, right?
Yeah, and with that comes a lot of lessons learned, seeing how Google has changed over the years and what Google has prioritized and really seeing the impacts that it can have on businesses that maybe take some of those shortcuts are going to really safeguard your business online.
These last two questions that Google has to consider when hiring an SEO are the following. Number one, how am I going to communicate with you, right? What channels are you going to be reaching out to me? And then, of course, the last one is, what interests do you have in my business? Just like when hiring an in-house person or when you've been in interviews in the past yourself, what interest do they have in you?
Yeah, those are great questions. So the first one, and figuring out how are you going to communicate, what type of meeting cadence can they expect, can really help you determine if they're going to be closely enough involved in your business to help it find success. There are tons of SEOs out there that are white labeling or sending the work overseas that they essentially set it and forget it. They collect the money and you might get a report in an email once a month, but that's just about it compared to other SEOs that are going to meet with you regularly, give updates on progress and performance, and stay in touch with your business to know about changes that are happening on the business side of things. And so there's a lot of big differences there. And so having an idea of how and when you're going to communicate can be a really important thing.
Yeah, and to the second point, right, if somebody is just, gung-ho and they're obviously sensing some desperation, they may not have the insight to tell you anything about your business or you, and they're just trying to close a sale. This is also indicative of maybe somebody that does not have the same type of experience as somebody that you would like to hire. All right, so for the last part of this podcast, we want to talk about some of those precautions, right? Things that to look out for, red flags. We've talked about some of these in past episodes. Something that's really funny, and as I kind of contemplate some of the different SEOs, quote, SEOs that we've had communication and contact with, all too often they have very similar things that they do. For example, we have a client, and we'll keep everything anonymous here, but we have a client who spent a good amount of money on a new website and an SEO, and we never heard or saw anything from this client for months. Now, in this case, they did have some credibility. They were just kind of dragging their feet. But when actually sat down and questioned and talking to, some of the very specific details about how and when said site was going to go live, they start to get, concerned look on their face. They can't speak to some of those points, and they start to redirect some of those questions. Obviously, those are going to be harder things for you to see, but we definitely see them. So it may be good for you to come to the table with like some of the resources we're providing you in this podcast, and maybe some research of your own. The more you have to speak to, the more you can see how they're kind of sitting in their seat. Are they shifty? Do they actually have experience to speak to some of the questions and points that you're bringing up? Or are they diverting and, changing the topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting right into some of the things to look out for, I think one of the red flags that really drives me up the wall is people that claim to know someone at Google or have some type of inside scoop at Google, and that's why they can deliver the results for you that others can't.
So there are a handful of common scams out there that you should just be aware of. Sometimes people will outrightly say, we've got this really great thing that's going to help you rank really fast, and this is what it is. It's, it's a doorway page or a shadow domain. Likely they're not going to say these types of terms outrightly because they are well known to be black hat SEO tactics. But anytime somebody's saying, we have this, this process that's going to just change everything for you and it's very fast, right? Typically that's going to be a red flag. Not that we want you to go with somebody who's going to drag their feet and scam you that way, but SEO should take some time. There is no way that's going to be immediate that is going to be a long-term solution that's positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So the specific mention of doorway pages, this is something that was done a long time ago and doesn't really produce quality results, and is something that you might find some quick, short success with, but won't stand the test of time. In reference to the shadow domains, this can be a variety of things. So one thing that can be common is SEOs that will have built up resources that can help a site rank that they own, and while you purchase them, you're getting some of that value, but if you decide to part ways, they take that value with them. And so this can be something to also ask about is, do you own the assets that are going to be created? But also just something to watch out for is they have everything set up and ready. And in this particular instance, you would maybe be leasing some of that SEO value, whether those are subdomains where they want to post their work to on a different domain than your website, or even something like building a separate site, which if you agree to, that's fine. But that you don't actually own. So if you part ways, they can sell it on to someone else.
Yeah, SEO or search engine optimization is organic, right? So consider other things that are organic, right? Exercise, like we've said, growing a garden. Anytime you enhance the time frame that something happens organically, you just run into byproducts that are going to be negative and that are going to have ultimately detrimental effects in the long run. Okay, other precautions to consider. We talked a little bit about link schemes, right? People that are using link farms or ways to generate a ton of new links really quickly. Obviously, those are not going to be relationship based. They're not going to bring in traffic that is relevant to your topic, your industry, things like that we've talked about in the past, but be wary of that. And then the other thing here is obviously if somebody's emailing you out of the blue and you're looking through that email and already getting some bad vibes, that's typically not a positive way to start a relationship like SEO.
Yeah, this is something we hear from clients that they're contacted constantly, whether it's through forums on their site or even phone calls, where people have hired out someone to crawl their site with a bot and send an automated email that says, hey, we can help you with your SEO, we can sell you links, things like that. And oftentimes these are people that are not delivering quality results, very likely from overseas. And so, yeah, not a great way to start out.
Yeah, this other one here, now we do offer some guarantees, right? We'll say if you run our local business package for a certain amount of time and you're not seeing profitability, we can guarantee that that's going to be the case, or else we'll pay you money back. But when somebody guarantees that you're going to get to a position in Google, this is definitely a red flag.
Yeah, so the guideline from here is that no one can guarantee a specific result on Google because they don't own Google. So someone making you that promise is likely just trying to sell you and on something they can't deliver.
Ooh, this next one is definitely one that hits home for me. This is when a company is secretive. And so many companies that we've come in contact with, they do everything in their power to evade transparency, right? Whether that is a low cadence in meeting and recapping performance and what was done, which Brian's talked about here, or just low transparency in general, whether that's through emails or other types of communication.
Yeah, another element of secrecy could be not wanting to tell you what the exact work was done to work towards achieving those results. So this could be anything from not actually doing anything to doing something black hat, or maybe trying to take some shortcuts on Fiverr and getting some overseas work done, but they don't want you to actually look at any of the work that you're actually supposed to be buying. And so this is a huge red flag and far too common, and hopefully more and more business owners won't accept this in the future and can help relieve our industry of snake oil salesmen that are out there.
Yeah, ultimately, we don't require our clients to understand how to build the metaphorical roof, as sometimes we say. We don't want you to get lost in the weeds, but we absolutely do want to do some education so that we can teach you what we're doing, why we're doing it, and give you enough information that you can make educated decisions. Ultimately, most of the work that we do as SEOs is pretty clear, right? What to do and what not to do. But sometimes there are moments that we have to evaluate pros and cons and the impact of some of the work. And so we do want to make sure we teach enough that people can make educated decisions. Normally, if you're talking to an SEO that is not a good resource, that's not going to be the case. You're not going to have that type of interaction with them.
Yeah, so that transparency is absolutely something that you want to find in an SEO, and any SEO that's being secretive or they don't want to give up their secret because only they know, and by sharing with you, they're going to give away the goods, is something to watch out for.
Great. Well, you guys, there's a handful of other things to look out for. Google has this resource that we'll share in the link on our YouTube version of this podcast, and we'll also have it on our site and in other various places to help you guys get that resource. Ultimately, we wish you the best as you consider SEO. We wish you the best in growing your business and growing your career, and certainly to consider us if you do get into a pickle and you need somebody to even just give you a second opinion or to provide our expertise and insights. We would be glad to do that. If we've missed anything that you think is really important, comment it in the video on YouTube, or you can leave us some feedback in email and contact us directly. This has been our podcast about how to choose an SEO. We look forward to talking to you next time. Like and subscribe so that you can stay up on all the latest when it comes to SEO and digital marketing. This is RunLeadGen Radio, and we'll see you next time.